The ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum uncover what prostitution was like in ancient Rome. The discovery of the buried cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum provided archaeologists and historians with a unique insight into physical intimacy and sex work in ancient Rome. When they excavated Pompeii, they found several houses engaged in the sex trade. The walls of these brothels were covered in sexually graphic graffiti, showing that the sex industry was thriving, with regular and returning customers. As might be expected, prostitution was not illegal, it was a legitimate part of the Roman Empire's economy and culture. It was quite widespread across the empire. The ancient Romans were open-minded about sexual expression. Just 30 years before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, Caligula, known for his perverse sexual behavior, including his bizarre sexual preferences, ruled as Emperor of Rome. During that time, Pompeii and Herculaneum were at their peak in terms of sexual activity. However, it all came to a horrific end with the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which buried the two towns in ash and lava. The going rate for a Roman prostitute was 16 asses. Sex workers in ancient Pompeii were reasonably priced, but they weren't giving their services away for free. The currency of the day was the Roman coin called an as. Plural, asses. Prostitutes were compensated with anywhere between 2 to 16 asses for their services. To give you an idea of the market rates, consider this piece of graffiti found in Pompeii, which sheds light on the going rate for a well-known sex worker. The graffiti reads as follows. If anyone happens to be seated here, read this first. If you're interested in fucking Attiki, it will cost you 16 asses. Whorehouses may have had their own currency. The term spintria originates from the Latin word for a male sex worker. These spintria were small coins or tokens featuring explicit scenes on one side, and a Roman numeral from 1 to 16 on the other. While their exact purpose remains a topic of debate, many believe they may have been used as an exclusive form of payment in brothels. Some suggest that they were created as a form of satire to mock Emperor Tiberius, who was notorious for being a depraved sexual predator. Penis-shaped street signs led to the nearest brothel. In modern times, locating a brothel isn't as straightforward as strolling down a street. But in ancient Pompeii, it was a different story. They had stone markers shaped like penises lining the roads and pathways, acting as clear signs leading to the nearest houses of pleasure. These phallic markers did a great job in guiding patrons to the venues. Furthermore, these markers were a testament to the city's bustling economy and the integral role that whorehouses played in the daily lives of its inhabitants. It's a fascinating glimpse into how the ancient Romans approached the business of pleasure and how it was integrated into the fabric of their society. Soldiers and children carried penis-shaped amulets for good luck. Among the items unearthed from the ruins of ancient Pompeii, a notable discovery includes numerous penis-shaped amulets. Amulets, known as bulla, were often given to young boys and soldiers to carry as protective charms. If a bulla is in the shape of a penis, it was specifically referred to as a fascinum. In ancient Rome, the male form and nudity were commonplace, especially in sporting events where participants competed without clothing. Prostitutes shared the same social status as actors and gladiators. While the ancient Romans were more open-minded about sex and physical intimacy, the profession itself wasn't held in high regard. Those in the sex trade business, whether they were free or enslaved, were considered to have a low social status known as infamia. This label was also applied to gladiators, actors, and dancers, offering little legal protection. Once marked as an infamous, these women could never escape the stigma. The Lex Iulia et Papia, a set of Roman laws, stated, this applies not only to a woman currently practicing prostitution, but also to one who has done so in the past, even if she has since stopped. The disgrace remains even if the practice is discontinued. Extramarital relations with prostitutes or slaves were allowed. In ancient Rome, it was considered socially acceptable for men to engage in relations outside of marriage, provided the partner was a slave or a prostitute. However, there was an emphasis on exercising restraint in such affairs. Engaging with married women in this manner was strictly prohibited. On the other hand, female patrons can enter into relationships with male sex workers only if the former took on the dominant role, again in keeping with the societal boundaries in place during this period. The Lupanary was the most popular brothel in Pompeii. In Pompeii, around 25 brothels were uncovered, with the Lupanary being the largest and most renowned. The name, Lupanary, literally meant wolf's den, using the Latin word lupa to refer to a harlot. This establishment stood 2 stories tall, featuring a balcony from which the women would call out to potential clients. Inside, there were 10 rooms, each adorned with intricate frescoes depicting explicit scenes. Some speculate that these frescoes served as a form of advertisement for the services offered. Remarkably, more than 120 inscriptions were discovered on the walls of these rooms, with individuals proudly boasting about the number of women they had been with them. The Lupanary was constructed just a few years prior to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Yet in those few years, it thrived as a bustling establishment. This information offers a vivid snapshot of the flourishing industry of its time. Prostitutes led miserable lives. Despite the alluring depictions of intimacy found throughout Pompeii and Herculaneum, the actual working conditions for those in the industry were far from glamorous. A professor from Western University describes it as not a very pleasant place to work. The spaces were often tiny, damp, and the rooms themselves were dimly lit and uncomfortable. Additionally, the rooms were crowded and unclean, with only a flimsy curtain separating them from the main area. Furthermore, due to the lack of legal safeguards, workers faced a high risk of experiencing both physical and sexual abuse on a regular basis. This harsh reality sheds light on the challenges and dangers faced by individuals engaged in this profession during ancient Roman times. Adult-only clubs were common among the elite. In Pompeii and Herculaneum, some wealthy households went a step further than visiting whorehouses. They transformed parts of their own homes into private clubs, complete with rooms adorned with explicit artwork. According to Thomas McGinn, these clubs were meant to emulate houses of pleasure and served as a display of the homeowner's wealth and social standing. In these private clubs, the homeowner would sometimes compel their slaves to take on the roles of sex workers, while at other times, guests willingly participated. 2 notable examples are the Casa del Centenario, known for its opulence, and the House of Vetii, which carried a reputation more similar to a common brothel. This practice provides intriguing insights into the leisure activities and lifestyles of the wealthy in ancient Pompeii and Herculaneum. So we have embarked on an engaging excursion to the ancient locales of Pompeii and Herculaneum, where we have unearthed intriguing insights into the leisurely pursuits of yesteryears. From exclusive gatherings within opulent residences to exuberant inscriptions adorning the walls, it is evident that the Romans were not lacking in their appreciation of carnal pleasure. Nevertheless, it is imperative to acknowledge that for the sex workers of that era, their reality was far from idyllic. They contended with arduous working conditions and, regrettably, often endured less than pleasant treatment.